everybody. Lance Russell and Dave Brown right along ringside. By golly, we're about ready to go with more big action.
Thank you very much, and welcome to Georgia Championship Wrestling. I'm Gordon Soler, your host, and we have quite an hour in store for us.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Championship Wrestling at ringside. This is Vince McMahon, along with wrestling's only living legend, Bruno Sammartino.
Welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce, another outstanding card.
Hey, guys, and welcome back to another edition of the Regional Rasslin Podcast, where we talk the territories. And I am, as always, your host, Ray Russell. And this week, it's more 1985 Memphis goodness with guest co-host Gene Jackson back as we continue the month of February. In 85, we look at the fallout of the Loser Leaves Town match between Jerry the King Lawler and Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. Have we seen the end of the King? Or has Jimmy Hart finally been exterminated courtesy of the Wimp Busters? Plus, the Fabulous One's Interns feud continues on. Playboy Frazier going to get himself a haircut. And there appears to be a new faction brewing here in Memphis, Tennessee. But before we get rolling, just a quick reminder that you guys can listen to the Regional Rasslin Podcast plus sister shows like the Wrestling Memory Grenade, now in the year of 1988 in the WWF Project. You can also listen to the Wrestling Stoop with the legend himself, Bob Roop, Barry Rose and Captain Nick Massey's Glory Days Grapple Concast. And dropping the day after WrestleMania 40, it's the debut edition of Dan Gennety's Pro Wrestling Academy, going back in time and covering the history of Japanese professional wrestling in the English language. And you can listen to all of those shows and so much more over at WrestleCopia.com. That's WrestleCopia.com, or anywhere your podcast streaming needs are met, from Apple to Spotify, Pocket Cast, and beyond. And while you're at it, do me a favor, guys. Follow me on social media for all the latest goings on here at the WrestleCopia Podcast Network. You can follow me on X, formerly Twitter, at Wrestling Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Wrestling Grenade. And while you're at it, why not subscribe to YouTube.com/Wrestling Grenade as well. And last, but certainly not least, now would be a fantabulous time to become a WrestleCopia patron. You can find me over there at Patreon.com/WrestleCopia. That address again, Patreon.com/WrestleCopia. Talking about that $5 all access tier. Get you so many gifts for just $5, including all of my insanely detailed show notes for every episode of The Grenade, Monday Warfare, and the Regional Rasslin Podcast. You'll also get early access to many of the podcasts here on WrestleCopia, where you can listen days and sometimes as much as a week earlier than the rest of the listeners. Then from there, it's remastered versions of the earliest episodes of The Grenade Show covering the 1989 NWA project. Includes enhanced sound quality, plus new content and conversation never heard before. But that's still not all. You also get digital downloads for your viewing and reading pleasure, random bonus video drops, and of course, our Patreon exclusive watch-along series covering many past WWF and WCW events. And for those who are already patrons, you know that the video casts have begun to launch, more on the way very soon. And you get all of that for the low, low price of just $5. No subscription, cancel anytime, give it a try for a month. I think you like all of the content that I offer, and every penny of it goes right back here into paying the bills to keep the WrestleCopia Podcast Network and all of the great shows here up and running for the months and the years to come. And now with all of that said, it is now time for more Memphis 85. Welcome back, Gene Jackson.
All right, got our snow jackets on and our toboggan
No,
gloves.
No, that was last week. It's okay this week, according to Dave Brown, anyway.
All right. Well, if Dave says so, I guess we're in the clear. Here, I was all bundled up, ready for another blizzard. So that
would have been quite a sight to see the crowd in there, in their coats on and their hats and scarves. That'd have been a great visual. Wish we saw that last week with the door opening as much as it was. I bet a lot of those guys wish they had their coats on.
Oh, you know it. I mean, because just imagine they finally get the heat built back up in there, and then they whip that door open, and it just all goes up.
It's 5 degrees outside, for crying out loud. Close that door. My God. For those who missed it, you got to go back and check it out. The big blizzard of 1985 last week in the Memphis territory. Lots of cocaine references between all the snow outside and the flour all over the studio, which should have been an uneventful week, Gene, in the Memphis territory. Got real in a hurry with several shows canceled, including Sunday in Jackson, Monday in Memphis. Even Tuesday in Louisville saw some changes in the originally scheduled card, leading to various Terminator matches, unfortunately. I wrote, damn that weather. But the good news is the car show went on as planned last week in Memphis, Tennessee.
That's right, baby. We were at the car show.
Oh.
You know, me and my guys, we're going to make it, baby.
Suspended from the studio, but not the car show. Jimmy Hart.
Lance Russell don't run the car show, baby. I'm going to be there.
We're going to see a picture of the Playboy later from the car show as well, but we'll talk about that when we get there. It was the TV that provided absolutely the most impact, as most of the shows were canceled. One of the most historical pieces of 1980s Memphis took place last week when Daydreamer number 2 finally arrived at the end of the program, rocking his new furry boots, Gene.
In any other instance, that would have been the highlight of the show, but unfortunately, he got upstaged by good old Jimmy Hart. But it was a highlight nonetheless.
I would say he got upstaged by Lance Russell. Man, give a little credit to Jimmy Hart. But man, Lance Russell, guys, for those who missed last week's episode, go back and check it out. Go watch it on my YouTube channel as well. Jimmy Hart dumps a bag of flour over the head of Lance Russell and finds himself suspended by Lancer himself. You are suspended. You are done and out of here. Lance Russell suspending Jimmy Hart indefinitely from the Memphis territory.
I tell you what, we saw a side of Lance Russell that we had not seen up to then. I don't know that we ever saw it again since, but we found out that when the shit gets real, Lance Russell will throw down and handle business.
Yeah, as we know, there's famous sound bites out there. Hector Guerrero goes a little too far. Tell him in Mexican just to get out of here, right? That's all Lance says about that. But
Tell him in Mexican just to get out of here.
In Mexican, not in Spanish, but in Mexican. God bless Lance Russell. But here he had enough and sent Jimmy Hart packing. And Jimmy Hart, we're going to see a little bit more about that here this week on the program. A lot more about that, I should say. As we begin the show, Gene, Saturday morning, February 9th now, WMC TV5, Channel 5 Studios, Memphis, Tennessee. It's Lance Russell and Dave Brown hosting the program as usual. And straight away, to keep the ratings after the blizzard debacle all across the territory, the first thing we do, wisely, is welcome back Jerry the King Lawler and handsome Jimmy Valiant from their trip to Japan.
Back from their wild adventures in Japan. Yes, I can't wait to hear about... Can you imagine being Jerry Lawler and you fly to Japan and spend 7 days on probably, I'm sure, mostly nonstop, just Jimmy Valiant day and night? Good Lord.
Probably split a hotel room too. Me gads. Yeah. So, but they went over, they were there for that world renowned Gold Cup tournament that doesn't exist. Went over there for a week and working for Baba in the All Japan territory, doing tag team matches as the King going to gift Lance a Godzilla stuffed toy here. Straight from Japan, or maybe the corner store, I'm not really sure. As Lawler going to recounts his story the Monday at which they were supposed to leave. The plane flight he talked about on the Lawler show with him and Boogie Woogie. They're going to go off to Japan. It's I think it was from Memphis to San Francisco to Japan, or at least that's the way it originally was supposed to play out.
Our first match was in Sapporo, Japan, which is way north of Tokyo. And what happened, we were supposed to fly over to Tokyo, then spend the night, and then fly into Sapporo the next morning, and then the rest that day, and then have the match that night. What happened, we flew from Memphis to San Francisco, and then we're supposed to connect with a flight from San Francisco on to Tokyo. Well, the flight, for some reason, from leaving Memphis was about an hour late. When we got to San Francisco, we had missed the Japan Airlines flight. There wasn't time to make the connection. So we called a travel agency, which was in Los Angeles. A little Japanese man named Mr. Ina. He said he panicked. So what we had to do in San Francisco, we had to jump on another plane, fly to Los Angeles. He was there to meet us at the gate with some tickets. We got on another plane, flew to Honolulu. Got in there at 10:30 at night. Got up at 6 o'clock the next morning. Now we were already
supposed to have been over there.
Supposed to be.
You had your rest
Right.
and got acclimated.
Right. We left at 6:30 the next morning. Flew for 9.5 hours from Honolulu to Tokyo. Jumped off a plane there. Went right down to another gate. Got on another plane to Sapporo for an hour and a half. This is unbelievable. I'm telling you, unbelievable trip. Got off the plane in Sapporo, and there's two little kamikaze taxi drivers there waiting for us. Now, you think the snow was bad here in this area, and believe me, in Sapporo, Japan, they have 5 feet of snow. Not 5 inches, but 5 feet. But it snows all the time. The people are used to it over there. Yeah. It snows all the time. The roads are just like caked snow and ice, and this guy was driving us. Then we had a 2-hour taxi drive at 80 miles an hour on the snow streets.
You were ready to give up.
When we got
referee, I give up.
when we got to the arena, the matches had already started. We had to rush, get dressed, go right out to the ring. And suffice to say, we lost our very first match in Japan, and we figured that was it for us. But then it was fortunately a double elimination tournament. We went on and won 6 straight matches.
Boy, you got on a roll then.
And made it to the finals. And in the finals, we faced, I don't know if you remember me telling you about this, Masa Saito. He's a guy who had a little run-in and put 17 Minneapolis policemen in a hospital in a brawl in
read about him.
And it was in all the papers and everything like this. Well, this guy, I mean, he bit the police dogs up there in this fight. But this guy was an animal, believe me. And unfortunately, we didn't win in the finals. We came in the first runner-up. They got the $100,000, but we didn't even realize this, but there was a $25,000 second prize. So Handsome and I got split 12 and a half.
Yeah, I mean, that didn't really cross my mind, thinking about how that affected their travel getting to Japan. It was crazy in Memphis, and guys couldn't get to the studio and all that. But yeah, they had to get out of Memphis before all that, and we've been dealing with this for a couple of weeks here, so it's not like this all just fell in on the one weekend. So.
Yeah, it's a horrific story if you hate travel, and I don't think anybody likes to jump from plane flight to plane flight here. He talks about going from Memphis to San Francisco, and then instead of going straight to Japan, it was up to Los Angeles, then over to Hawaii, then off to Tokyo finally, but their first match was in Sapporo. So once again, what did he say? It was a ride, right? They took a drive through the snow in Japan. He claims 80 miles an hour in 5 feet of snow. I don't know about that. But that's still a crazy drive after all of these plane flights. You get there. He says the show was already starting to go on as they finally get there. I just wrote, woof. No, thank you.
No, that doesn't sound fun at all.
I don't know what Baba was paying these guys, but I don't think it was Stan Hansen or Bruiser Brody type money.
I can't imagine that it was. and the Japanese fans were probably excited to see some more Americans over there, but until they've got used to Hanson and Brody and Funks and all this, and now you got the King and the Boogeyman coming. That's all different.
Well, Lawler can hold his own out there, but Jimmy Valiant, I'm sure that was just a whole new level of what the hell is that? Especially in the All Japan side, right? Because that's more of the wrestling oriented promotion of the two.
And he's over there in Japan with his FM 100 means music tight song advertising the Memphis radio station.
yeah, it's crazy. Well, Lawler said, I think I have that here in my notes coming up on his Lawler show, but he talks about Jimmy Valiant wearing those FM 100, those trunks. And he says that they asked him, what is that? He said, oh, it's the biggest radio station in the entire United States. Goes nationwide, baby. Woo, mercy. So
he come back expecting an extra bump, however he gets that from the radio station, if you know what I mean. But I put you over, baby. I put you over. Biggest station in the United States.
I want a bump one way or the other.
Because either way, it's going to end up being the same kind of bump.
That's true.
Whether it's cash or we just cut to the chase.
Whew, they lost their first and last match on the tour, says the King, but they won all 6 matches in between a double elimination tournament, which it was not. Somehow, though, they didn't realize that the winner gets $100,000, which they knew. They didn't realize being the runners-up, which he claims they were, they still got $25,000. I wrote, I don't know about that, Gene. If I was entering a tournament, I think I would know second place would get you $25,000.
Yeah, what a pleasant surprise
What a
that
surprise.
must be. Well, I'd have just been shooting for second place to begin with. I mean, that's not too bad. But yeah, that was pretty funny. That they kayfabed that whole tour and that whole tournament gold cup concept,
Right.
and they're just they're just kind of making it up as they go, and I was kind of like that John Lovitz character on SNL. Oh yeah, the second place got $25,000. Yeah, that's the ticket. Yeah, that's
good. The ticket. Yeah, absolutely. And they reference Mr. Saito here in this promo as well. Said he beat up 17 cops, obviously referencing the McDonald's incident with Ken Patera. Now, a lot of people confuse the story. They think Saito actually went to McDonald's with Ken Patera. It was actually Kenny doing that all by himself, but the police tracked him back to his hotel room, and his roommate was Mr. Saito, and he opens the door. And he just goes all bonzo gonzo on the cops as they enter the hotel. The hotel room, and he's just beating them all over the place, Haku style, I guess. And I think there was even a female cop involved in there, got him a little more trouble. But yeah, so I mean, it was.
I'm just picturing Saito suplexes getting dealt out in a hotel room on poor cops everywhere. What a sight!
Well, the story, the narrative. It's funny. Everybody's told the story for so long that Ken Patera went to jail for throwing a boulder. He claims it was a much smaller rock, but throwing a boulder through a McDonald's window. No, I'm sure he would have been fine. He probably would have got 30 days. I don't really know, being a wrestler or whatever, but no, they went to prison for assaulting 40 officers. It's like there was just the way the story was told, like a dozen cops laying everywhere in the hotel room.
Yeah, I remember picturing that as I would hear it over the years, and you picture that Ken Patera and Mr. Saito roll up on a McDonald's. They want a Big Mac. They won't serve them. So, like you said, they go out and pick up a boulder.
Yeah, together. 1, 2, 3. Right, yes. That's how I was.
Knock the entire front end out of this McDonald's.
That's how I used to see it.
The police have to come, and they beat, the entire police department, which that part's somewhat true. But like you said, that's not at McDonald's. That's at the hotel room. I'm sure Saito is just like, what the hell's going on? All of a sudden, his room's just getting ransacked by these cops.
I'm sure he regrets staying with Ken Patera. I'm sure they never roomed again after that incident. Well, maybe in prison for a week or two. But nevertheless, we go on with this promo.
Did Ken ride alone in his big '87 return to WWF? Was he riding solo that whole run?
I think they expedited Saito back to Japan immediately after his release. He was over there for a little bit afterwards. I thought I had read he wasn't allowed to return, but obviously not true. He would be back here various times for the AWA and WCW over the years. But
Patera comes back in '87 and is like, "Hey, Iron Mike, can I catch a ride?"
Okay.
Okay.
I got to shower first.
Okay.
If you can wait 4 hours. No McDonald's. Oh, no McDonald's. Oh, Arby's. Oh, okay.
Okay.
Sorry, I'm getting this way off track here.
No, that's good. That's good stuff. I enjoy it. Hey, it's better than some of the stuff we have coming up here. No, I didn't say that, guys. Stay tuned. As up next, the promo continues. We heard from Jerry the King Lawler. Now we're going to hear from the Boogie Woogie Man. Here he is, handsome Jimmy Valiant.
Where is he? Handsome Jim, Honolulu, baby. Where'd you get those smiles? Woo! Domo Avagato, King Jerry Lala, Benjo. Now, I know you don't understand Japanese. What that means for all my brothers and sisters out there is, thank you very much, Kingfish, where's the toilet? Now, see, that is Japanese talking now. You know something, baby? Kingfish and the Handsome Jimmy, we beat Japanese, we beat Puerto Ricans, we beat Filipinos, we beat Mexicans, and we beat Europeans. They were all there, and we beat everybody, you understand? Except that one Fujo, what's his name? Matasaita, man. Killer. Yeah, he's a killer, Jack. But that ain't nothing, Jack. We had a good time. We came back with a little cabbage. Not much, though. I spent a lot of money, man. I went over to the dog trade. They got Japanese dogs, man, running out there. I put some money on them dogs, Jack. I want to say something one more time. You know, Kingfish, you know Handsome Jimmy, you know, once or twice in the USA, I have slept on the floor, you know, because maybe I fell down and that's why I woke up the next morning. But for about 11 days in a row, I'm sleeping on the floor. Now, that's pretty hard to do. You don't get up in the morning, but hey, Fish, man, crack this neck, Jack. But anyway, we did have a good time, baby. Came back with a little cabbage, people, and I just want to say, whoa, Mercy, it's good to be back in a good old USA.
Well, I
think you got a lot to be proud of, and son of a gun, if transportation had been right, we'd have been looking at the winners right here and there.
All right, so Jimmy Valiant going to join in here, and what is he wearing? Why don't you describe some of the stuff Jimmy Valiant rocking here, this big style, the new style coming back from Japan, baby.
Oh, Jimmy Valiant has gone full kabuki. Like he's got his
kabuki.
He's got his what do you call those?
The kimono looking.
The kimono. That's what I'm trying to say. He's got the kimono on. I mean, him and Lawler. I mean, they look like Japanese tourists that just came back from Japan. I mean, they're decked out. He's got the headband on, the whole nine, and he is. And the fact that he gave Lance a Godzilla, that's fun.
Yeah, Jimmy Valiant, I love the headband, the Japanese flag headband.
Yes.
That was the best part of the whole entire thing. And I thought he was going to come back doing the
Phil Hickerson years later.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, PY Chuhai. Yeah, I grew up on some PY. I bought that. I didn't think he was Japanese, but I didn't realize it was supposed to be, a stupid gimmick either. I was like, oh, this guy's terrifying. Yeah, Phil Hickerson in Japanese gear. But no, I was surprised Valiant didn't come back doing the Billy Graham gimmick with the Kung Fu grip. Whoa, baby. Here we go. But he comes out here, sings something about Honolulu or Hawaii or something. It's like, no, you went to Japan, Jimmy. As he says, domo arigato means thank you. Where's the toilet? He says they beat everyone in the tournament except Mr. Saito. Jimmy, though, says that they won 25 grand, split it 12-5 each, but he spent all his money at the Japanese dog track. I wonder what happens to the losing dogs. Do you think they go into the food? Never mind. So the purpose here, clearly, of this promo is simply to welcome them back. Nothing more, nothing less. It's funny that Jerry Lawler has this major matchup coming, and I'm not going to spoil it right here, but he has something huge coming up later in the show. But here, not even addressing it.
He's like, well, I'll be out 3 more times. It's okay. There's plenty of time to get to that. We're going to prove to everybody that we really went to Japan by wearing these kimonos and talking about Japanese dog tracks and all the silliness.
Didn't buy that at the dollar store. Well, Lance Russell going to do the babyface thing here, blaming their transportation problems as the only reason that they didn't win the entire tournament. So there's always that. It's all about that plane flight over. That was the whole issue. That's why they lost the final night of the tournament.
Yeah, that makes sense because I'm sure Jimmy didn't partake of anything that would have otherwise hindered their ability to win a wrestling match while they were there.
Well, when we get to the Lawler show, I have a couple things to say about Jimmy Valiant's quote unquote work over in Japan, but if he was ever invited back, boy, would I be surprised. As we head to the ring for our first match here this week on TV, Southern Tag Team Champions, the Interns, with their always entertaining manager Troy Graham, taking on Mark and Brad, the Batten twins. As the Interns going to dominate early on, Brad Batten with some surprise spots here like a sunset flip, going to get him a 2 count, but the Masked Champions just dominate with quick tags and a pair of high backdrops, sending Batten into the sky. Then they followed it up with a double backdrop as well. I wrote, it was like watching the Terminators do the same moves over and over, only these guys are actually good and interesting.
Yeah, it's like the exact opposite of the Terminators, but I get where you're going with that.
So finally, we see a hot tag out to Mark Batten, as it's all Bonzo Gonzo with a 4-way melee for about 3 seconds. Mark gonna tackle intern Dirty Rhodes, while referee Jerry Calhoun busy with the other 2 men in the corner. And then Troy Graham with the infamous steel chair, which he swings from his wheelchair directly into the crown of the head of the legal Batten. And the Intern's going to steal another one. This one only goes 2 minutes and 11 seconds. I wrote, wow, that went quicker than I thought. I don't know how this helps the Battens at all in their quote-unquote feud with the Playboy.
2 minutes, and I always go back to a few weeks ago where we were having 9-minute and 12-minute matches against people who were considered, straight up jobbers. And then guys like the Battens and the Daydreamers are getting beat in 2 or 3 minutes, and they're actually booked on the cards in the towns and are supposed to be trying to help draw money. Like you say, it's bizarre.
Very confusing right now in the world of Memphis booking. As we continue on, though, we just saw the Interns in action. Now we're going to hear from Troy Graham and his Southern Tag Team Champion, the Masked Men, as Lance are going to shill tomorrow's Jerry Lawler show, promising footage from All Japan. Is Troy Graham going to wheel himself over and ask if they brought any rice back? Did you bring any rice back? Ask him, Lance. No, just straight away, very first line of the day, does not let us down.
Did he bring you some rice and rice back, man? Hey,
Some rice back for their mammy.
And their grandmammy, too. Talks about some grandmammy here this week. In fact, it's coming up next. Is Graham going to lay it on Steve Kern here and his family once more? Says he wishes even his grandmammy was out here this week. Man, it's just getting more and more crazy. But he's pointing out that Steve Kern's daddy was laid out right here on this very studio floor. And there's no snow here this week, Gene. So where's Kern this time? What's his excuse this time? As Lance says that, well, they'll be here Monday night, but we go back to stop pointing out the obvious, right? You're a heel.
Yes. Oh, you're killing me. Killing me, Troy. Come on, take it easy on these guys.
Lance came up with the quick line like, wow, the weather, well, we made it here, right? He already defended that. This week there is no issue, and they're still not here. And I got to ask, where the hell are the Fabs? If they're really, Memphis hometown boys. As we see a VTR shown once again from the Mid-South Coliseum the last time out, we saw a little bit of this match before the wild brawl around ringside as Troy, he swears the film has been tampered with. Now, I've heard doctored, I've heard edited, and I know what tampered with means, but it's just not something you hear all the time, so it made me chuckle. Oh, it's been tampered with. That video's been tampered with.
Yeah, they used to have the tamper-proof lids on the Tylenol and stuff back in the day, but I never heard of footage being tampered with.
That's been tampered with.
That's Troy.
So we hear from Troy Graham, one side of this feud between the Fabs, the Fab Fathers as well, and the Interns. As we go off now to a VTR, that's where they are. They don't need to be in the studio. They're sending in the tapes, literally mailing it in. It's the Fabulous Ones. Got to cut a promo here. They continue not to bother to come to the studio. And I wrote, that'll win back some fans. What did you think of this? Like, we know how they left. They left to go to bigger pastures and greener grass. And now they're coming back home after they were kind of buried a little bit in the Memphis territory for leaving. And the best way to get them over is to have them no-show TV pretty much even when their fathers are in town, they can't bother to be here for television.
Yeah, because in the fans' mind, it's like, well, if you guys would have been here, your dads wouldn't have got beat down and left laying on the studio floor here.
Right here on this very floor.
On that very floor. And again, Troy Graham's not doing him any favors. I mean, even as a fan, I'm going to be sitting there watching these VTRs going, yeah, why aren't the Fabulous Ones there? And then when Troy's pointing out, like, hey, there ain't no snow this week. We're here. Why aren't they here?
Right.
And back then, that's just kind of how it was. Like, Troy don't care about burying the baby faces or how they come off, but it's not a good look that they're just being represented through promos each week. But man, it really hurts when you got Troy pointing out like, hey, we're here, they're not, why not? And then like, well, they're not here, but they'll be there Monday, but here's a video. And then we get to listen to this.
Boy, I think about Troy Graham getting a job with Crockett. He lasted about 2 weeks with Dusty. And you don't talk about me like that, baby. That's something, Dusty takes notice of things like that. Troy gets away with whatever he wants here, and I'm not saying he's trying to bury anybody, but he's going to do whatever he can to get himself over and his team over. I don't see that flying in other places. So it works here, though.
Yeah, Memphis, in so many ways is its own animal. But, yeah, exactly. He would have got pulled aside the first time, like, hey, baby, take it easy on me now.
Well, I think even if this was Lawler, I think Jerry might have taken him aside and said, hey, Troy, let's not talk about this, right? So.
Yeah,
it probably depends on who it is.
And honestly, I figured Lawler and Jarrett were probably a little salty that the Fabs weren't coming to TV themselves because, allegedly, and I know a lot of people who were there in this era and beyond, they didn't get paid for TV, because it was considered promotion for them. So, they really didn't have any leverage to make people come to TV. So I figure maybe Lawler and him are like, yeah, go out there and rub their nose in it. Maybe to make them show up and start being here for some of these TVs.
If they even bother to watch the programming, they might not even know their dads got beat up. Oh, they did? You beat up our dads? Okay, well, we'll cut a promo about it as they do that here. Stan Lane says last time around, the brawl in the Mid-South Coliseum was just the tip of the iceberg. This ain't about belts anymore. It's about family and revenge. As Steve Kern praising Jackie Fargo, who now apparently resides in the Bahamas. I wrote question mark. He says they're Jackie's boys. As Fargo going to return from the Bahamas to Memphis, Tennessee to help them in their plot their revenge against the Interns. As apparently he can't do it over the phone. So Kern says that Jackie knows their dads very well. And it hurt Jackie what Troy Graham and the Interns did to the Fab Fathers. So the Intern's going to find out just how good the Fabulous Ones are. God help you, Troy Graham. You better stay in that wheelchair, he says, where you belong. So basically threatening a cripple.
Well, there is, you can say this promo is special at the very least, because at least Steve Kern showed up for it.
There you
Because
go.
typically it just been Stan Lane doing these. So
Well, they're going to trade off and on moving forward. It's like we're going to see a bunch of Kern promos up next. So it's like, okay, it's your turn now. Hey, Steve, it's your turn now.
Yes, this ain't about belts. He has such a proper voice.
This is not about belts. It's about family and revenge.
That's what it says on this paper right here that I was told to refer to.
FM 100.
FM 100 means music. And if you don't believe it, look at Jimmy Valiant's ass when he's in Japan.
So there we go. We heard from both sides, the Interns and the Fabulous Ones. The feud going to continue. They're going to wrestle this week once again. As Lance Russell always loves this next song, he says, I was like, you do? It's the Beat It by Michael. I didn't see this coming. Beat It by Michael Jackson. I always love this song. It's Beat It. I was like, what? And then, I was like, is there another song called Beat It, from the 50s or something? No, it was Michael Jackson, Beat It. It's the Fabulous Ones riding bikes, not Schwinns, but rather motorcycles up and down the road. But I wrote they're doing the same poses as usual, only on bikes this time. So they do the point, they do the little solidarity, the hand, the hands, slap hands or whatever. And we get all the same pictures that we see from the Fabulous Ones videos, the new Fabulous Ones videos, the other new Fabulous One videos, all of the above, and then some too, the Fantastics. So here it is again. And they're doing it on motorcycles this time. So it's a little different.
It's a little different, not much better, but I mean, the most fun thing coming out of that is just, picturing Lance Russell driving down the road, tapping the steering wheel, singing along.
Oh, I love that. I love that.
From the Thriller album.
That Jackson 5 boy. Oh, let me tell you, summon a gun. He can really belt one out. So
that Billie Jean's not my lover.
Not my lover, I'll tell you. Boy, howdy.
That's what I told Jimmy Hart last week, to beat it.
He did. What I could see Lance doing the Thriller dance. That would have been something else.
Doing the Vincent Price part at the very least.
Oh my, we better move on. So, yeah, but anyways, Beat It. That's when you can get away with such things on TV. Can't believe they played a Michael Jackson song. Well, Vince got away with Thriller for years there on Championship Wrestling. But we're going to continue on. We got action in the ring, if you want to call it that, because it is handsome Jimmy Valiant. Returning from Japan. I don't know if he had the FM 100s on here. I didn't notice, but he's taking on Big Lou Winston, who isn't quite as big as he would be later on, but it is still Big Lou out here as the boy from New York City, rocking the kimono-type robe and that Japanese bandana all the way out to action here. As Winston going to attack, but missing an elbow drop, Jimmy taking right over, going right to the sleeper hold. Is Calhoun going to check the arm 3 times? Jimmy Valiant releasing on the second arm raise, however, because he just doesn't give a fuck. And out goes Winston. Match goes 42 seconds, and probably for the best.
Probably my favorite Jimmy Valiant match of all time, honestly.
The first time I started watching the Crockett stuff in order from TV, I was getting upset. Like, why is Jimmy just coming in there doing a back elbow and an elbow drop every week? Same match, 15 seconds in and out. And I would complain until I saw Jimmy have to work a match. And I'm like, let's go back to those 15-second matches, because I was a huge I was a kid. I loved Jimmy Valiant, the character, back then. But watching it as an adult, you can only take so much.
I can remember when I first got a VCR, the very first VHS tape I ever rented was Great American Bash 86. And me and my dad sitting there watching it. And, of course, the Jimmy Valiant Shaska Watley match. Where Jimmy beats Valiant, or where Jimmy beats Shaska in the hair match, and my mom walked in the room, was sitting there, and was like, "Why are they cutting that guy's hair?" And my dad's like, "Because he lost the match." She's like, "I didn't know they had to get their hair cut when they lost a match." Like, well, no, not in all of them, just this particular match. And as he shaves Shaska's hair off, then he wakes up, and then he reaches down and he's grabbing up the hair off the mat. And Tony Schiavone goes, grab another Brillo pad. And my mom goes, oh my God, what did he say?
Tony.
Shaska Watley is bald. Grab another Brillo pad.
Oh my.
As a kid, it didn't really dawn on me, you know.
I had never
was, like, freaked out by that, and then
I
years
had
later,
never noticed that before. Wow.
I watched it again, and I was like, "Oh boy, that would be bad news today."
Oh, Tony's getting canceled next week.
Sorry, Tone.
Oh man, maybe it'll come work for us. That would be fun. As Jimmy Valiant putting the sleeper on, putting Lou Winston out, leaving the ring as he's announced the winner. He's done with this. Leaving the studio, refusing to revive Big Lou. I guess leaving him for dead, right? Isn't that the whole thing? Like if you stay passed out too long, you could potentially suffer brain damage at the very least. Which Jimmy's probably been in a few sleepers a few times, I'm guessing as well. As Valiant going to finally return though, chopping the back of the neck of Lou Winston, waking him up, only to pitch him straight over the top rope and down onto the floor. But the best part of this thing, Gene, I don't know if you were paying attention. Lou Winston was out with the sleeper, gets woke up, picked up immediately, flung over the top rope to the studio floor, and then like a Grand Theft Audio play, NPC, he just stands up and walks out of this. Doesn't sell a damn thing. Like nothing had just happened. Lou just gets up and goes out of back to the quote-unquote locker room.
Well, because everybody knows when you get that smack across the back, it just undoes everything. Being the devil's advocate, this used to be my go-to. Like, even though I'm an old school fan, when guys would be like, well, it was better back in the old days. It wasn't stupid like it is now. It was real. And I was like, oh, you mean like back in the old days when a guy would put somebody out with a sleeper and act like the only person on earth that could wake the person up is the guy who applied the sleeper? If he didn't slap him on the back, then they were left for dead. Like,
it was
so much more realistic back then. Shut up.
You have to be the master of the sleeper. Like a wrestler like Jimmy Valiant can only do such a thing. Well, he learned that chop in Japan, right? So that's what it was all about. As up next, Lance Russell going to run down the upcoming Mid-South Coliseum card, including, and this really confused me, the Southern Heavyweight Champion, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, taking on Jerry Lawler. And we're obviously going to talk a whole lot more about this, but when did it become official that Eddie Gilbert was the champion? Wasn't there all sorts of controversy coming out of their last match in the Coliseum, the Texas Death Match, the Ether, Jerry Lawler basically being handed back the belt, then Eddie Gilbert stealing the belt, and somehow through all of this, he just became the champion?
Wow, I guess that possession's 9/10 of the law thing really checks out. Like, he managed to hold on to it for a week while Lawler was gone, and he just magically became the champ. Because, that was the whole controversy the week before, was that the decision was reversed, and, and we were pretty hot about it, and it didn't make any sense. And I guess maybe somebody along the way is like, that is pretty stupid. Let's just forget we even mentioned that, and let's just act like Gilbert's the champion. Maybe nobody will remember. We do.
We do indeed. What is this, Vince McMahon booking? Oh, nobody will remember, pal. That was last week. Somebody give me a turkey sandwich, light on the mustard. As we roll on, we're going to talk a little bit more about that match right now. We go back to a replay from last week. Jimmy Hart, Lance Russell, the big flower angle. As Lance explains that due to last week's weather, Eddie Marlin and Jerry Jarrett weren't in the studio. So Lance and Dave were sort of put in charge of the program to oversee things and make sure nothing got completely out of hand. I wrote, in the Memphis studio, Rasslin? Good luck, Lance. So that was why Lance says, we. He didn't say I suspended you. Did you catch this here? He's like adding Dave Brown into this. That's why we suspended Jimmy Hart. We, Lance, I wrote. So got to bring Dave Brown to this. I felt sorry for Dave, but Dave was just sitting there smiling as Eddie Marlin apparently backed Lance's suspension. So Jimmy Hart was sent home for 30 days. And Lance and Dave, they say they don't take delight in it, but they do have to keep things in order around here. Lance even admits, looking back, well, it's a little funny now. But, I wrote, why the suspension? If it's funny now.
I mean, I love the angle, and I love, how Lance played it and everything. I love everything about it. But a week later, hearing it recounted, and then Lance saying it's funny now, but,
right.
He's still suspended.
Well, we gotta keep order around here.
It sets a weird precedent moving forward if you're a wrestling fan, because it's like, okay, well, there's going to be a lot of heinous shit go on in the future that's going to go way farther than somebody getting flour dumped on their head. But
right.
Lance isn't going to suspend them, and at times even Eddie Marlin or Jerry Jarrett's not going to suspend them. So people are going to look back on this and be like, well, why doesn't Lance just suspend him, or why doesn't Eddie Marlin suspend him? Why did Jerry Lawler, why did he get hit by a car years later and they still just had a match Monday night? They didn't do anything about it, So, and again, that's me being way too literal, I guess, and looking at things.
No, I think the only defense they would have here is that Jimmy Hart, I don't want to say put his hands on, but assaulted in some way an announcer rather than a wrestler. That's the only thing I can come up with here for the suspension. You don't put your hands on Gordon Soley. You don't put your hands on Lance Russell, I guess. The only thing I can come up with here, really. But
the real heat that it puts on Lance Russell for me is if he had carte blanche last week, if he was completely in control to do things as he seen fit, by God, he should have fired the Terminators when he had the chance. Damn it, Lance.
Amen. Yeah. I was hoping they would do something to Lance just to get terminated, permanently terminated. So we hear from Lance Russell. He re-explains the situation. He brings Dave Brown into the whole story as we go off now to a VTR. Remember last week I said that was the last time we were going to see Jimmy Hart in the studio, but it's not the last time we're going to hear from Jimmy as we go off now to a 6-minute VTR with Jimmy Hart, baby, as he talks about how he accidentally spilled a microscopic amount of flour on Lance's jacket last week, baby. Even offered to brush it off. Then from there, he found out that he was suspended, although he didn't buy it. So he called Eddie Marlin, collect. Remember when that was a great bit? Oh, I called him collect. Got him, pal.
Young people are watching that going, what? Collect? What does that
Called
mean?
him collect. Okay.
Yellow?
Collect call from Homer?
No way, man. I only accept 1-800-collect calls. Give me the times, Homer.
So Jimmy Hart thought it was a joke of a suspension. An announcer suspending Jimmy Hart? I don't know. After everything he's done, the flour, like you said, Gene. But Eddie Marlin confirmed Lance was in charge last week, and Jimmy is indeed suspended for 30 days. And they hung up the phone, and it only took Jimmy 15 minutes to come up with a master concoction, baby. Hart calling Eddie Marlin back, presumably again collect, and proposing Eddie Gilbert put his Southern title on the line this coming week against Lawler. But Hart will leave for 1 year if Eddie loses the belt. But if Eddie's opponent loses, they leave for a year as well. So Jimmy Hart, he talks about, and I love this because this is when you know somebody's leaving, right? They got to put the exclamation points on it here. Hart says they can't come back under any assumed names, no disguises, no hoods. He calls them hoods. No lookalikes. This is kind of funny because he says no lookalikes following his so it's kind of interesting. Jimmy Hart laying that all out there. You can't come back in any way, shape, or form. Loser leaves for a full year.
Yeah, because it acknowledges how much that had been done to death, and knowing that when he laid this out, that most cynical wrestling fans are going to like, they don't matter because they're just going to come back with a mask or they're just going to change their name or whatever. So, like you said, it's definitely let you know that okay, well they're really doing something here, but it also kind of gives a nod to all the times that when they don't mention it, you pretty much know that's how it's going to play out. But.
And there's probably some jaded fans who bought into these type of routines in the past that are going, I don't care what he says. I still don't buy it hook, line, and sinker that, somebody's not returning after this because it's wrestling after all. And if they can find a way, they will. But Jimmy Hart says that Eddie Marlin fell for it. He called up Jerry the King Lawler, who agreed to the deal. Furthermore, at some point, I guess Jerry Lawler vowed if he didn't win a world title in 1985, that he'd retire from wrestling. I must have missed that, Gene. I never heard that.
I remember that being a thing later on, in like hearing about it years later, that was something Lawler had said as a way to kind of, I guess, put some pressure on whomever to get him a world title. And I guess Jerry had already kind of somewhat had something they thought worked out to get him a title within the year of 85, and then they had to backpedal and figure out something else. But it is something that got said. I don't think it was a big to-do, but in passing, he had said that in a promo. And
I
Jimmy Hart.
I only imagine that maybe he said it, back in December, heading into the new year. That's why I missed it, because we watched every piece of TV here, and I haven't heard it yet. But
oh yeah, he hasn't said it. He hasn't said it in the new year. It had to be towards the end of. I'm sure after one of those screwy Bockwinkel matches or something, they're like, well, next year, if I don't win it, I'm going to retire. And he has said, at different times that he originally intended to retire by like age 35 or something. And here we are, freaking 70s.
until he was forced out of it.
Yeah, until God said enough of that.
Yeah, so, well, that and all the fried chicken said that as well. But so, I mean, I look at this here, though, and it's a little convoluted. I like that they're trying here to put more emphasis on this story because it is a little interesting. Jimmy Hart says, they add a little bit here. He says, well, you mentioned that if you can't win the world title in 1985, that you'll retire from professional wrestling. So if Eddie Gilbert beats you this week and you're out for a year, you can't return until next year, which means you don't have the opportunity to win the world title in 1985. So basically trying to add that if Lawler loses on Monday, he's going to eventually have to retire from the business. So they're trying to put extra emphasis on this Rush storyline.
So, I mean, all right, stepping out of this episode of TV here. So do we assume that Jimmy Hart got this deal from Vince thrust upon him, which he then thrust upon Lawler, and this is what we've scrambled to come up with, and I guess perhaps that's why they went ahead and just like quietly put the belt on Gilbert so that in this match, he would have the title and put more stakes for Lawler to potentially win, because all this just unfolded maybe in the past week or two, or
I think it was pretty fast. I think Jimmy Hart's deal was pretty fast. It's been 20 plus years since I listened to the old Lawler shoots, the old Jimmy Hart shoots, and probably not the best guys to ask questions anyway. Jimmy Hart, I mean, he kayfabes a lot of stuff. Meanwhile, Jerry Lawler just remembers things the way he remembers them. He talks about replacing the Macho Man the following Raw after Savage jumps to WCW. And it's like Savage didn't immediately pop up on WCW, but also you didn't replace Savage, for quite a while permanently. So, Lawler just remembers things the way he remembers them. No fault, really. I mean, he thinks he's telling the truth. But in this instance, I remember him doing a shoot talking about I thought he said he got the information while he was over in Japan that Jimmy was leaving. Jimmy was like, I got to leave. I got to take this, this deal. And Lawler was kind of bummed about it, obviously. I don't think it was a situation where Jerry was like, go get your money, Jimmy. It was like, oh, damn, we kind of need you. But yeah, I know it was pretty quick. Jimmy Hart jumping over there. And obviously, much like the dog, it was, you're out of there, pal. Just leave and, get the hell, get up here. So
that makes a little sense about how we pivoted to, let's just say Eddie's the Southern champion. And I mean, this is one of the things it's fun about Memphis is just how convoluted these stipulations get a lot of times, especially guys like this where they've wrestled all these. I mean, because you go back and look at those Lawler and Dundee feuds, and where the first one was for the Southern title, and then it was for Southern title in a car, and then it was Southern title car and his crown, and Southern title car and a wife's hair, and just all this shit. And but then they sold out the Coliseum for 26 weeks or whatever, whatever it would be. But when it seemed perfectly logical at the time watching it, but when you go back now and as you're reading through all these, it's just like, good Lord, it's a lot to get people to take all this in. But like you said, adding the depth of not only is he going to leave town, but this could essentially be Lawler's retirement match, because if he has to leave town and he doesn't get a shot at the title, then this could be what ends his career. And,
that's why I put my notes here. I think Lawler even addresses it. I don't remember it's in my notes if he does, but I wrote here in the notes with Jimmy Hart. I wrote, so if Lawler has to leave Memphis for a year, he can't win a title. I wrote, what's keeping him from winning a world title in another territory? So it's there's a little bit of a loophole there, Jimmy. But Jimmy Hart, he can't be ringside. He's suspended for 30 days, remember? Cheap way to get him out of this. But he has a big surprise, he says, for the king. I don't know. I wouldn't go that far, but he wrote, and of course he ends it as always, who is the smartest man in the Memphis wrestling territory, and why am I? Jimmy Hart one last time. What do you want to bet that he went and changed right after this promo? It went and changed and caught a flight straight to New York, done with this shit. Like, this is just ridiculous, baby. And he's like, no more managing the Terminators. Get me the fuck out of here before another blizzard hits and Vince changes his mind.
Good riddance, baby. I'm going to eat some beans and taters, and I'm off to New York City.
One last good fill of Memphis beans and taters. I'm sure it tastes a little different up there in New York City.
This stuff's made in New York City? New York City!
But, Yeah, but Jimmy Hart is off for all intents and purposes. He is no longer in the territory. He cut that one in front of a fireplace somewhere, probably Jerry Jarrett's house. I don't know.
Yeah, it was. It was funny in Memphis back then. They would just cut a promo wherever they were at. They're sitting on their couch in some rundown apartment, or they're standing in front of a window where the light's messing with the camera.
Right.
He's sitting on a fireplace. Like, there was no thought given to where they're at for these.
Yeah, no lighting,
promos.
No lighting in that promo either. A little bit dark. Yeah, and it was daylight, but just the room, it was kind of dark. But it is what it is. Says Jimmy Hart going to finish up here. We may have another promo or two from Jimmy Hart on some upcoming house shows, but he's no longer here, so it's really irrelevant. As Jerry Lawler going to come out in the studio after hearing from Jimmy Hart there, rocking his Wimp Busters shirt, and he makes a comment here. I thought it was kind of funny. He wrote, Jimmy Hart rushed this. I guess he didn't mean, I took it as rush the angle, but I wrote, boy, I'll say. But Jimmy Hart rushed this going into this with the contract and whatnot, as Lawler, reiterating the rules again, sells this as the most important match in his entire life. As the King, he planned to retire, as you said, Gene, at 35 years old. And here in 1985, he is 35 years old. As he says, well, he's made some decent investments. Now, Jerry, Coca-Cola, the paraphernalia, that doesn't count as investments. But if this was his last wrestling match, the King says he'll be okay financially. But he can also go somewhere else and challenge for the world title. I wrote, there you go. Smart thinking there, but we don't want that, says Lance Russell, and neither does the King. Jerry signed the contract knowing, though, the potential consequences, but he says he's ready for hot stuff.
So Lawler come back and reiterated everything that Jimmy said, and now we know what the stakes are. And yeah, I'm glad he addressed that, because you wonder, like, okay, so Jimmy, are you insinuating that Jerry Lawler is not good enough to go wrestle in any other territory? That if he loses a match where he can't wrestle in Memphis, essentially his wrestling career is over with for
he just came
year.
back from Japan, but he can't work anywhere else but Memphis, Tennessee, in the States. Yeah,
Ric Flair ain't putting him over, baby.
I don't, maybe it's because I know what's going to happen and I know, everything about this entire storyline, but I'm just not feeling the Lawler promo here. It doesn't feel as important. It's not hooking me in. Now, I see a lot of old wrestling and I get hooked into some of the promos, no matter what the outcome's going to be. But here, Jerry Lawler's saying all the right things, but I'm just not feeling the importance. I think just because it came out of nowhere. We wake up Saturday morning, we turn on the TV, and all of a sudden in 2 days, one of these guys are gone, as Lance Russell called it, an end of an era, one way or another.
I've seen Lawler cut more passionate promos about a softball game he has coming up in Jonesboro that afternoon.
I thought it was just me.
So, no, I totally agree. And like you said, he laid out the stipulations and he said everything, like you said, that needed to be said and that told you what the match was. But no, there was no passion. I've seen in the pantheon of great Jerry Lawler promos, it's at the rock bottom. Yeah, there was no passion. Like I said, I have felt more inclined to get in my car to go watch a softball game that he was going to have than this match on Monday night, which, by explanation of it, should be the biggest match of his career. But it's just like, all these stakes are involved, and this is my chance to get Jimmy Hart out of Memphis, and this is something I've been trying to do for years. But so yeah, come see it or don't, whatever. F Jimmy Hart.
Yeah, well, maybe we can blame it on jet lag as we go off to the ring. Tag team action, going to see Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert, the Southern champion. Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert teaming with the Mid-America champion Iron Mike Sharp, taking on the team of David Johnson and David Haskins. As we get a little bit of a continuation of last week, going to start off with Hot Stuff and Haskins in the ring, as Eddie with the old Lawler middle rope fist drop right out of the gate, and then Johnson tags in, but meets the wrath of Iron Mike.
Oh, okay.
Mike Sharp in the ring, going to do a little damage before Gilbert back in, suplexing Johnson on the studio floor, and then throwing him back inside for the Hot Shot DDT, giving the heels the win in just 1 minute and 49 seconds.
Oh, okay.
Making that Interns batting match look more like a marathon there. That's
Well, they did. Mike Sharp didn't get a whole lot of offense in. He was in for like 10 seconds, but I got to give him a soundbite anyway.
That's our guy. The surprise hit of Memphis Wrestling 1985 so far has been Iron Mike Sharp.
Matches aside, because let's face it, Memphis TV was more about the promos and the angles and setting up everything for the Coliseum, and they're doing everything right on paper, right? We heard from the Interns, and we heard from the Fabs. Big match. Then we heard the big stipulation, the loser leaves for a year, Jimmy Hart and Jerry Lawler. We heard 6 minutes of a Jimmy Hart promo. Way to go out, Jimmy, by the way, because you're not getting 6 minutes straight in the World Wrestling Federation.
No.
But Jerry Lawler then with a rebuttal, and of course now we hear from the third man involved, the new Southern Heavyweight Champion, Eddie Gilbert, out here. As Lance talks, again, this being an end of an era, Eddie now feels like Moses, he says, the chosen man to lead the people of Memphis, Tennessee. Lance says, well, I think that's a little bit too much.
Come on, Eddie.
Oh, Eddie, that's a little bit much out here.
Bible.
Oh, you feel like Moses. Eddie, what's wrong with you? Your father would roll over in his grave if he were dead. But Eddie says that he detected a hint of concern during Lawler's promo about their upcoming match. At least somebody detected something.
I was like, he detected more than I did then.
Exactly.
I didn't take an ounce of concern in Lawler's promo.
Or anything else for that matter.
Or any emotion at all. He was more he put more emotion into talking about his trip to Japan and kayfabing the details of it than he did this big match.
I think he was channeling Steve-O in this promo, really. But we go back to Eddie Gilbert here. Lance Russell telling Hot Stuff that if he's not concerned with the match, he's crazy. And I thought to myself here now, okay, I get it, because everybody's got something on the line. But really, at the end of the day, Eddie's a heel. All he's got on the line is Jimmy Hart. So Eddie should be nowhere near as worried as Jerry Lawler.
Yeah, exactly. You know, if now that you mentioned Steve-O, now I can't wait to hear Jamie Ward's opinion of this. He may love that promo. He may think it's the best promo Lawler's ever done.
Oh, okay.
I do like that. I love that. I wish I had done that here as we got going this week. I do love a new name that Jamie coined recently. He calls Mike Sharp Jr. because he is, right? His father was Mike Sharp. He wrestled, right? Now everybody forgets that, right?
That's true.
Most of their big stuff happened over in the early days of infancy of Japan wrestling, which ties into my other big show coming up with the Pro Wrestling Academy. So we'll talk about the Sharp brothers. But yeah, here in Memphis in 1985, it is Mike Sharp Jr. Going to be hanging around Eddie. We'll see how much longer that lasts. With Jimmy Hart likely having his days numbered. But yeah, so Eddie Gilbert, big takeaway, he said Jerry Lawler placed Jackie Fargo, and now Eddie Gilbert going to replace the King here as the leader of the Memphis territory. So Eddie, I mean, again, it was just a normal promo, but it was still better than, Lawler's, whatever that was.
It was, and I've always bought into the old saying in wrestling, like, under promise and over deliver, and like, I really wish Jimmy Hart had not promised a huge surprise for Lawler, because boy, does that not pay off.
Not at all. Well, he didn't. That's why I said, as soon as he said that, they fade to black, and I said, he got changed, got on a plane, he didn't give a shit what he said. I don't care what I promised people, baby. Fuck that, I'm gone. Out the door.
I mean, if I'm Lawler, I would have had to try to figure out if that was the original plan. After that, I'm like, all right, well, we got to spice this up a little bit, because this is going to be like a fart in church after him saying this is going to be a huge surprise, and this is what we got.
I'm thinking it was like the Black Scorpion. They had no idea what the huge surprise was going to be when he cut that promo, and that's what they came up with at the end of the day.
That may not even been discussed. Like Jimmy may have just threw that in. Like,
yeah,
watch this, baby.
Given Mike Sharp's build, they could have put one of those executioner masks on him, right? The old the rag, things with the whole eyes. And I would have bought him as like an executioner coming out there with a big battle axe. That would have been cool for a corner, man. Just don't let him wrestle or talk.
Oh, okay.
Whenever he swung his battle axe, people
I know who that. Yes, exactly. Mike, we got to take your.
It's not me. I mean, okay.
Every week, Mike Sharp sounds more and more like a South Park character. As we continue on, we get a music video here set to Bob Seger's famous final scene. We see back history of Jerry Lawler and Jimmy Hart, which for the time, I got to admit, at least they put some effort into something. And this is probably the most effort in the entire feud right now of the big story coming up Monday night is this video. I don't know if this is something they used before for something, or somebody spent a lot of time this past week putting this together, but it was just it was a collage, if you will, a video collage of various incidents between the King and Jimmy Hart.
Yeah, I'm curious because a lot of the footage was really old, so maybe it's, something they had been sitting on, maybe was repurposed. But I guess that song title only fits for this particular attraction, but
right.
I don't know, maybe they've had these types of matches in the past and they used it. But like you said, Bob Seger certainly made a bigger compelling argument for seeing this feud capped off than we heard from Lawler or even Hart for that matter. So kudos, Bob.
We head back to the ring now. Tag team action. Going to see the Daydreamers take on Kevin Kelly's still here and Big Bill Rose. We haven't seen him since he took that spill when the top rope broke upside down on his head back in the studio a few weeks ago. And he actually responded to that video clip I posted on Facebook. Big Bill Rose did. And he simply said, "That shit hurt." That's all. And I had to go do a little my due diligence and checking his Facebook profile out, but he seems to be the right guy. Looks like the same dude, just a lot older. So yeah, I don't see why else a guy by the name of Bill Rose would simply write "that shit hurt" and happen to find my video for that matter. So yeah, but I thought that was pretty cool.
That's definitely fun. What insight.
Well, I can't believe that Nails, the future Nails, Kevin Kelly, is still here, because the last time we saw him on TV a couple weeks ago, he was no-selling everything, refusing to take anything, blocking moves. And it looks like we might get more of the same here this week, I wrote, as Kelly going to sandbag on a body slam, and he has to be forced down with a Daydreamer on a clothesline. The Daydreamer literally has to fall down with Kelly to get him to take the bump. And I'm starting to wonder if he's intentionally not cooperating, or if he's really just this bad.
A buddy of mine was telling me recently that he used to be a fan of Kevin Kelly back in the day, and I'm like, well, clearly you didn't see him in Memphis in '85. I was like, because there was nothing to like. He was the shits. And I suggested he go back. I sent him a couple of links. I'm like, you go check them out, and you tell me what you think of Kevin Kelly. I hadn't heard back from him yet, so I'll let you know what he comes back with. But I think we know there's only one appropriate answer. Otherwise, he didn't watch it.
You shattered his memories, is what you did. As Nail's finally going to tag out on this one. Big Bill Rose tagging in, and the ropes, they stay okay. They don't break this week, but he doesn't fare too well either way. Eats a power slam here, and the Daydreamer's going to get the win here out of nowhere. Match goes 2 minutes and 56 seconds. My takeaway in this one, no furry boots this week. I wrote bummer.
That is a bummer. And this just in from Bill Rose, that power slam, that shit also hurt.
It probably did. Seemed a little awkward in the landing, but they took it home, so that's all we need to know. The Daydreamers score a win here on TV, maybe for the first time this year, as we continue on with a promo now from the Dirty White Boys, who stop by and have a word with Lance Russell. There will be no Jimmy Hart this Monday night. No Rasslin holds either, they claim, for their upcoming Street Fighter. No, this is the 5-pound bag of flour on a pole match. I stand corrected.
No, okay.
Thank you. So it is the Dirty White Boys taking on the Terminators, sans Jimmy Hart now in that 5-pound bag of flour on a pole. And they say that the Terminators, they don't know any wrestling holds. Well, neither do the White Boys. They know way more than the Terminators, I'll say that.
I was going to say, the Dirty White Boys forget wrestling holds that the Terminators never knew. God,
the Dirty White Boys are like Lou Thez and Carl Gotch compared to the Terminators. But they say it's going to be a real fight for that bag of flour on a pole. What a line. Oh, it's going to be a real fight to get to that bag of flour. Boy, I really hope we get clips of this match in the future weeks here on TV. I haven't watched too far ahead, so I don't know, but I'm hoping that we see the finish of this match, how it plays out. But the White Boys say that once they're done kicking the Terminator's tail, they're going to do it for Lance and flour the Terminators. Do it for Lance, baby.
Do it for Lance. That should have been a T-shirt.
Do it for well, it still can. Yeah, we just keep taking notes. As Dave Brown announces that the weather is opening up, Gene, sound the alarm.
Hey, Dave Brown has become the biggest baby face on the show with that announcement.
He sure did. As last week, Lance Russell suspending Jimmy Hart. Dave Brown got to do something here this week to get his heat back. So the weather going to open up across the entire territory. And he announces that all of the shows should take place as planned this week. As Eddie Marlin even stopping by to announce that should Eddie Gilbert beat Jerry Lawler, then Jimmy Hart's suspension will be lifted. And he will be at the upcoming arena events. Thank God we got that out of the way.
Mm-hmm. I guess that's not as telling as it feels since nobody knew that he had actually left. But, to me, That's like this is the absolute guarantee that Lawler's winning.
Well, some of these towns got to be confused because they're behind on the bicycle. So it's kind of interesting to wonder how this all played out. I guess they would have played this feud, I guess, in all the markets, though, since Jimmy is, for all intents and purposes, leaving fairly soon. As we go off now to another promo, Mike Sharp stopping by the studio for an interview, but also is the Playboy Frazier out here, as Mike has Jimmy Valiant once again this Monday night, this time in a no DQ, no time limit match. And Mike asks, what does he look like? A cream puff?
Mid-America heavyweight champion, Mr. Iron Mike Sharp, who will be putting that belt on the line against handsome Jimmy Valiant. And Mike, let me make it this way. No time, no disqualification.
I'm not worried about that. You think you're scaring me?
No, I'm just telling you.
What do you think? I'm a cream puff or something? I'm going to worry about some stipulation like that?
No,
what's the matter with you anyway? I'm the champion. I am the champion. I come down to the South, I immediately become a champion, and I'm going to remain a champion. Jimmy Valiant, he can't beat me. There's no way he can beat me. I'm too tough. I'm in too good a shape, and I'm psyched up all the time. I get in there and give 110% every moment, and there's no way he's going to win. I'll guarantee you that.
Okay, we'll find out, and you got one.
He's going to worry about some stipulation. Oh, it's not a stretcher match. It's no DQ, no time limit.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So no DQ, no time limit. What do I look like, a cream puff?
What do you think? I'm a cream puff or something? I'm going to worry about some stipulation like that?
Nice. We have a new addition to our Mike Sharp's greatest hits.
Mike Sharp vocabulary, yeah. It's building slowly but surely. I kind of hope he just sticks around the entire year now. I know that's not the case, but at this point, let's just keep him rolling. See what else other gyms he comes up with here.
What do you think? I'm a cream puff or something?
You never know what's going to come out of Mike Sharp's mouth. He says he gives 110% every moment. Not every time he gets in the ring, not anything like that. I give 110% every moment. You got to so matter of fact in his words.
I think the real fun is Mike Sharp doesn't know what's going to come out of Mike Sharp's mouth. He's as surprised as the rest of us.
Okay.
I'm telling you, I love it because we never got anything like this in the WWE. Maybe if Vince had heard some of these promos, we'd got more promo time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he should have been a frequent guest on that TNT show with this kind of stuff.
God damn, pal. Give this guy the mic.
You're taking Alfred's place.
That would have been fun. But unfortunately, the audio in this promo, it cuts out momentarily as I wrote text tux, because it's Playboy Frazier back out here in his tuxedo once again. So the tuxedo rental store obviously back open after the blizzard, but he's rocking a cowboy hat with it. It's kind of fun. Just looking at a 7-foot, 500-pound man in a tuxedo and a cowboy hat.
Every time I see him in that get-up, I think he looks like he should be in that movie Cannonball Run from the 80s.
It would be perfect. Oh man, he could have been like Boss Hogg's like long lost cousin or something too, right?
Yeah,
On a couple episodes of The Dukes. Yeah.
Been the heavy for them. Literally.
During his promo, even though we can't hear it, he shows off a picture that he took, presumably from the car show, with a Playboy Playmate. But no tux on there. It was just that shitty red jacket he wore to TV last week. So he probably literally left the TV and went straight to the car show and got his picture taken with this Playboy Playmate.
Well, if he'd had his tux on, she'd have probably left with him. So that was a mistake on his part.
Indeed. As we're going to close the show, final matchup, another tag team encounter for the expiration of time. The Dirty White Boys, Lynn Denton, Tony Anthony, taking on the Nightmares, Danny Davis and Ken Wayne. And it's Denton and Davis going to start here. Davis taking Denton down early gives us a strut across the ring. I wrote, does everyone strut in Memphis, Tennessee?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I know that's affectionately known as the Fargo strut, but it really just should be called the Memphis strut because that was like You had heels do it. You had baby faces do it. I mean, did anybody look more ridiculous doing it than the Fabulous Ones? Like, I know that was their shtick where they were, Jackie's proteges, but theirs was so over-exaggerated, and then with them being baby faces too, like, I don't know. Stan Lane just always looked absurd to me doing that damn strut.
Well, it's kind of like modern day indies, right? With the leg slaps and the DDTs, just overdone here in Memphis, Tennessee, as the Fargo strut. It seems to be a big tag team thing. Like the Fantastics did it way beyond Memphis, but so many other guys here, so it's, but here we get it from Danny Davis, of all people, one of the Nightmares, as Tony Anthony coming in, but missing a flying clothesline from the middle rope, and the heel's going to take over as we learn only 90 seconds remain in the time. Got to save all that time for that Jimmy Hart promo from earlier, I guess. Tony, though, finally gets the tag off to Lynn Denton back in the ring for a 4-way melee, as we see stereo hip tosses and then stereo sunset flips. I told you they knew more wrestling holds than the Terminators. The Dirty White Boys with stereo sunset flips get the one, but the bell sounds. We're out of time. Come on, Lance. I mean, you're screwing these guys. Give them 2 more seconds of TV time. What's it going to count? But Lance has got to be fair. They ring the bell. 3 minutes and 48 seconds. We go to a draw.
Well, you can't say it's because the other matches ran long. That's for sure.
No, you want to talk about light on the wrestling. This is borderline a Vince Russo booked episode of Raw.
Exactly. I mean, I've seen people complaining about last night's Raw and the lack of wrestling on it. And I was like, well, you hadn't seen too many episodes of Memphis Wrestling.
Very curious booking this week. The lack of use of people like the Nightmares on TV thus far this year. I mean, it makes me wonder why all of a sudden now. Are we changing bookers? What's happening right now? Some of the guys that have been here the entire year thus far haven't really been on TV at all, and all of a sudden everybody shows up this week.
Yeah, it definitely stood out. And like you said, it's usually a sign of a booking change of some sort. I don't know. I wish we had a way to really pinpoint. I know they typically hand it off every 6 months, and sometimes you can look at the cards and tell exactly when, but other times it's a little more subtle. So,
well, Jerry Bryant's already disappeared, so I'm kind of questioning.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, there you go. That's a sure sign always.
I'm watching the Nightmares in the ring, and I just noticed, like, their gear, it's like baggy. Their trunks are baggy. Their tights are baggy. And I know they've went through the masks and they've went through the paint, and you can only do so many different ways. And I'm down with trying to be real guys now. We're the real deal heels. We don't need any of the gimmick stuff. And we're just Danny Davis and Ken Wayne. They tried to get rid of the Nightmare tag team name and move away from that, but that didn't work. So it's easier to call them the Nightmares. So they've been doing that again for the last few weeks. But I don't know, man. It's just, to me, they look very generic out there. And I know they can work, but it's just like watching them. They're dressed like job guys.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, until they start wrestling, just to see them standing in the ring, you're like, all right, well, who's these two jobbers? And by 86, they've got some new tights. They got the star back on their face, and they're spray painting their hair with glitter and different colors and look kind of ridiculous. But so eventually they figure it out. But here in 85, yeah, we've hit a lull where the Nightmares are just feel like a job team with a name until they start wrestling, and they're still both.
Oh, they're good in the ring. Yeah,
presentation is lacking for sure.
Absolutely, and now they've lost Jimmy Hart as well. So we'll see what happens with the Nightmares as we move on. We're going to close out this episode of Memphis TV. Jerry Lawler with a closing promo, which would be fitting. He has a final word before what may be his final match. Again, rushing this angle, it just doesn't feel as important as it should, Gene. But I get it. Jimmy Hart's gone. So what else can you do? You got to at least reference a reason why, and you got to get Jerry Lawler over in the process. Obviously, the man who's been feuding with Jimmy Hart ever since Jimmy turned his back on Lawler when he's broke his leg. You got to finish the story. People know all about finishing the story here in 2024. So, but it just feels so rushed. I get it again, but I don't know. As we get closing comments also from Lance Russell, brief clip of that Lawler Hart video once more plays us off this week. I feel like they really tried. They gave a lot of time. I'll put it this way. They gave the TV a lot of time this week to put over this Eddie Gilbert, Jerry Lawler loser leaves for a year match.
Well, I'm really glad you pointed that out, because while I did detect that in the first, well, technically second Lawler promo, it really stood out to me, and I know they were rushed, we're running out of time, but for the words Lawler was saying, like, hey, if this turns out to be my last two Raw, I just want to thank the fans. But it just, no feeling at all.
No passion. There was no emotion. Yes.
No emotion, no passion. It was like somebody just reading words off of, like a poor actor reading words off a script. Like, in no way did I feel that Lawler was in any kind of danger. Not just because I know how this goes, but just, even watching it at the time.
Do you think with Lawler making as much money as he was going to make, whatever he was going to make, whether they sold out or drew 12 people or whatever, right? Lawler was going to get what he was going to get. Do you think that maybe he was so jaded from this entire situation with Jimmy Hart taking off the way he did that he just didn't give a shit? And it was kind of like feeling the emotions out there? Because I know, the story is, he didn't get along with Dundee, but man, they went out there and made as much money as they could together, and there were certain times where they got along better than they, did other times. But either way, they would, if there was money to be made, they set things aside, they went out there and they did their thing. Do you think maybe, I mean, we're just guessing here, but maybe like, bad taste in Lawler's mouth and he's just kind of going through the motions right now, processing this?
I think without a doubt that's what it is. In Lawler's mind, Jimmy Hart was a lounge singer that had a hit and, had his little moment in the sun as a rock star. But when, him and Lawler hooked up, Jimmy was singing in lounges around Memphis and, just a struggling singer. And he took and put him on TV5 and made him into a star wrestling manager. And here, I'm sure he felt Jimmy should be indebted to him for the rest of the time that he was involved in the wrestling business. And now here Jimmy is just going to rush out the door to head up to New York and not only make a ton of money and become an even bigger star, but not really allow Lawler to do a proper send-off and to get a big payoff on him leaving town. And I think he was just so disgusted with how this was playing out, he couldn't hide it. Like you just said, he wasn't into it. He was pissed off about the way this was all transpiring, and it was all he could do to go out and say the words, but he couldn't bring himself to mean them or to seem like he
I've never seen Lawler more shook than this. I don't mean with his nerves. I just mean where it throws him off his game to where he can't deliver his typical Jerry Lawler-esque promo. You talked about he's sold softball games better than this, but and you're right, he has. But I mean, anybody who's ever worked, it's just I felt more passion than this, and this should really be true. He wants his belt back. He was ripped off. He should be wanting revenge on Eddie Gilbert regardless. And now Jimmy Hart gone for a year. You expect a lot more out of this. But yeah, I mean, I just now came to that conclusion as we were talking here that maybe, it was just Hart leaving that just threw him off. And this is what we got out of it, unfortunately.
I think you absolutely nailed it, man, because we've talked about this in the past, but over the years, I mean, I've seen Jerry Lawler start out a promo talking about an appearance at the mall, and it's lighthearted, like, hey, come out to the Mall of Memphis this afternoon. We're going to be signing autographs, and we're going to be blah, 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 blah. But Monday night, when I get down to that Coliseum, let me tell you something, Joe LaDuke or whoever it is.
Right.
And he could just, shift gears and turn that, volume up, just make you believe that this was the biggest damn thing happening Monday night, and you had to be there. And that just was not the case. So I think you nailed it, man. I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head. That's exactly why this came off the way it did.
Pretty crazy. Come back from Japan and one of your, I don't know if you can call him a best friend. I really don't know their acquaintance type situation outside of the wrestling business, but obviously somebody you confided in for quite a while here. And like you said, you did some favors for getting him in the door and whatnot. And then this is how he repays you, so to speak. Although I'm sure Jerry understood, whether he wanted to or not, he understood that the money and the opportunity was there. I'm not saying he agreed with it, but he probably understood that. Well,
I mean, hasn't Hart said in interviews over the years that by design he made sure to not be in the same place with Lawler again after Lawler found out? When Lawler came back from Japan, him and Jimmy Hart were not in the same place again.
Right.
And that was by design because Jimmy didn't know what he would do. He was afraid he'd break his jaw or something, and have him go up there hurt. So,
again, I'm only going back off memory of shoot interviews that I watched 20, 25 years ago. But I feel like maybe, if I remember correctly, I feel like Jimmy Hart said something along the lines of, like, he didn't even talk to Lawler for maybe X amount of years after this. I could be wrong, but I feel like maybe that was a thing. But Hey guys, you're invited to join us April 20th, Orlando, Florida at the fabulous Rosen Center Hotel for Barry Rose and Captain Nick Massey's Glory Days GrappleCon. Tickets available right now at eventbrite.com. It's a full day of events, meet and greet with dozens of your favorite wrestling superstars, both past and present. It all kicks off 10:30 in the morning. Ron Simmons, a special 1-hour Q&A session. Damn! Then from there, meet and greet all of the great superstars in attendance. Get your pictures, get your autographs, and spend some time. Have some conversations. Make a memory. Before we head off to the Legends of World Class reunion panel, hosted by former announcer Mark Lawrence. Just some of the names on the panel include Brian Adias, Al Perez, the one-man gang Missy Hyatt, and Jack Victory. They're going to go back in time and discuss their time in the world-class territory. Then from there, late in the evening, it's a shot of Jack with Jack Victory. So come on in, stop by, have a good time, have some drinks, and most assuredly, have quite a few laughs as well. Again, mark your calendars, April 20th, Orlando, Florida, the Rosen Center Hotel. It's the Glory Days GrappleCon. Get your tickets today over at eventbrite.com. Anyways, we're going to roll on to the Jerry Lawler Show, February 10th, Sunday morning. This was actually an incomplete episode, but there's not a whole lot to it anyway. Jerry Lawler bragging about returning from All Japan once again, showing off a Japanese wrestling magazine, as we see pictures of the likes of Tiger Mask, the second one, Misawa, Jumbo Shiruda, the Great Kabuki, even Los Brazos are in this magazine, but the one that catches Lawler's eyes, the British Bulldogs, Davey Boy Smith, and the Dynamite Kid. And this one made me laugh, Gene. He said, I called and told Eddie Marlin to sign these guys if he ever gets the chance. Can you imagine the British Bulldogs in the Memphis territory?
Oh my gosh. If I could have seen the British Bulldogs in studio one time,
yes.
In any set of these random jobbers on there, holy, that would have been a sight to behold.
Oh, Dynamite would have had a field day, and I would have loved to have heard Davey on the pro. Well, you know, Lance, it would have been great. It would have been a good time to see the bull.
But just match with the Terminators. Just let them have one match with the Terminators.
That would have been glorious. That would have been phenomenal. Yeah, they would have a special guest tag team for the week, the British Bulldogs. But I had to laugh at this just thinking about it's a fucking clothesline. That would have been great live on TV, right? Though, we got to fire these guys back to the WWF. But no, I just thought it was funny looking at that here because we're heading into WrestleMania. The Bulldogs they come in after the Stampede buyout in '84 for Vince. They leave and go to Japan, and then they return in '85, and they're there until it's the fall Survivor Series '88. And it's just kind of funny though because I had to laugh because you think about how the guys get paid here in Memphis. It's like you couldn't afford the Bulldogs on your best. You could afford them, but you wouldn't pay them, right? So they wouldn't have lasted either way.
No, absolutely not. As we get into what we're about to discuss here, this match that we see highlights of Lawler and Valiant against Killer Khan,
quote unquote highlights, air quotes around there. Put some quotations around the highlights
in the World Cup Finals here. Mm-hmm. This prestigious Gold Cup World Cup Finals.
Yes, sir.
I would love at some point. I hope that you get a chance to talk to Dan on the Puro Wrestling Academy.
Yes.
About what the perception of a guy like Jimmy Valiant would be in Japan, because I would be fascinated to hear that answer.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. No doubt about it. When I was watching this, obviously that came to my mind. Is Lawler going to talk about the big World Cup tournament, what he called the World Cup Finals. Here, it was Jerry Lawler and Jimmy Valiant wearing those FM 100 trunks, taking on the team of Killer Khan and Mr. Saito. Now, a lot of Americans will recognize both of those names, so at least, he made sure to put a matchup that maybe some people were familiar with here, the talent involved. Lawler again reiterating, we won 6 of our matches, losing 2. They were the runner-ups. As he talks about the Japanese fans being subdued. During mid-match here, he actually has to pop up in the corner of the screen and explain why the crowd's dead. Outside of a double pile driver off the top rope, they're not going to make any noise. It's not because he had to make sure it wasn't because they weren't over, Gene. It was just because that's what they do.
Yeah, they were just being respectful.
As we're going to see Jimmy Valiant here submit to Mr. Saito's Scorpion Deathlock, as the King claims that he wasn't yelling that he submitted. He was yelling Mempho, not no. I don't know. That doesn't make sense to me because if you yelled no, you wouldn't be submitting anyway. But The King having some fun there as he again says that they won $25,000 as the runner-up, and then mentions Mr. Saito's encounter with the police once again as he shows off some artwork apparently made in Japan, but he had to do it real quick. He was going to show off various artworks, but he only showed one because he said, and I quote, "We got to make sure we have time for the Possum Queen."
The essence of the Jerry Lawler show.
I Googled the Possum Queen. Some things came up, but it had nothing to do. I don't know what the hell a Possum Queen is, but I really don't know. But it just made me laugh, So it's very, very Memphis-y,
Oh, yeah.
Also, fan mail pushed back to next week. Maybe Lawler waiting for an interpreter. I don't really know. They're running out of time. But for shits and giggles, guys, I also posted another match on YouTube of their time. There's 7 days there in the All Japan promotion. It was Lawler and Jimmy Valiant taking on the Great Kabuki and Takashi Ishikawa. As Valiant also jobbing in that one again to Ishikawa's version of the Scorpion Deathlock. So that must be his kryptonite. I wrote, "Woo, mercy." So if they only lost 2 matches, those are the only 2 we actually see here. Unfortunately. However, Lawler claimed it was 6-2, which they actually, that totals 8 matches, obviously basic math. But I only have records for 7 matches. They actually won 3, lost 3, and went to a draw, if we're being technical. Also, that Saito quote-unquote finals match was actually their 3rd match on the actual tour. So all of this shit completely made up.
Yeah, I mean, they kayfabed the hell out of everything about their little Japanese tour there. And who knew that if just a year later, if Shaska Watley would have locked a scorpion hold on Jimmy Valiant, he wouldn't have got his head shaved at the Great American Bash 86.
And, I was scrolling through that match very quickly. I don't remember if it was earlier today or yesterday. My son Connor, he knows Jimmy Valiant and is selling very well his, whatever you want to call that, the trimmers and the things that he has on the mat. And
seizures.
The seizures, okay. We watched it quite a bit in Mid-Atlantic. So I was going through these matches really quick, and as they release him, he lays there. I said, "Oh, watch him. He's gonna, tremble on he's not gonna do that from a scorpion." So I showed him, and sure enough, Saito releases the Scorpion Deathlock, and Jimmy Valiant just starts shaking, uncontrollably on the mat. That's his sell job for a fucking submission hold. So you gotta love it.
Yeah, he ran a wrestling school for years over there. I can just imagine on the day where they're teaching selling. All right, baby, you get down here. Lay down, and you just shake. You got to shake like, see? No, not like that. You got to shake like this. Shake like this.
And Shawsville, right? North Kakalaki.
Yep.
He promoted that 30 years ago on Radio WWF, and it's still right here in my noggin. Yeah, I can't tell you every capital of every state off the top of my head. But that's where I'm at in my world. As we continue on the following day, February 11th, Mid-South Coliseum, obviously Memphis, Tennessee. Bell time, 8 p.m. It's good to be back Monday night in the Mid-South Coliseum, and even better that it's not canceled, Gene.
Yes, look at this. We're actually having an event that was scheduled and advertised, and it's happening. How exciting.
So we kick things off here, tag team action. Tojo Yamamoto and Leaping Lanny Poffo over the duo of Joe Lightfoot. Wow, where the hell's he been? And Mr. Wrestling, who is actually Tommy Gilbert, the father of Eddie Gilbert, under a mask here. And Tojo and Lanny going over, I see by pinfall. I've also seen by DQ. It would be kind of weird for this match to end in a DQ as an opener, but also, given the fact that there's no real job guy here, I could see it being a DQ in Memphis.
What an odd combination. Tojo Yamamoto and Lanny Poffo.
Mm-hmm, indeed.
That's fun.
Yeah, everything about this match is interesting. Also, the feud goes on. It's the Batten twins putting up $500 versus the hair of Playboy Frazier. You know what that means, Gene. We're going to be seeing a haircut upcoming very soon.
Oh, look at this. Imagine it's going to be hard to be a Playboy with no hair.
All those locks, those beautiful Playboy locks. Where will they go? We'll have to wait and see what happens on TV in the upcoming weeks. Also on the card, the big back alley street brawl we were supposed to see last week. It's going to be the Daydreamers going over on the Nightmares. So how about that?
Hey, finally. How many weeks into the feud are we? And the Daydreamers finally pull off a straight up victory over the Nightmares.
And the way the booking's been going here, now that they've got a win, they'll probably be gone from the territory.
Yeah, that'd be par for the course.
We continue on what they call a return grudge match. Apparently, Miss Linda got involved the last time around. This time, it's the Macho Man Randy Savage going over on the exotic Adrian Street on a DQ. So I have to wonder, did Miss Linda get involved again?
Yeah, I mean, boy, we love these DQs in Memphis.
We do.
Lord help us.
What else can you say? Well, this next match guarantees no DQ and no time limit. That's a scary thought. It's Jimmy Valiant taking on Mike Sharp. So I don't know about that note. I don't know if that's going to sell me to come to the arena promoting a no time limit match between these two. But no disqualification, guaranteed winner here. Going to see handsome Jimmy Valiant go over on the Mid-American champion Mike Sharp. And we have a brand new Mid-American champion. Handsome Jimmy, baby. So,
my gosh. Made him look like a cream puff.
Oh, he's no cream puff. Come on now.
What do you think? I'm a cream puff or something? I'm going to worry about some stipulation like that?
Or something.
or something, yeah. And you think I'm a cream puff or something? A ho-ho, a ding-dong, a nutty buddy.
Or something.
Or something. So, Mike Sharp dropping the Mid-American title. That may mean he could be on his way out fairly soon, but Jimmy Valiant taking over the belt. So the feud ends, perhaps. I'm not really sure.
Fingers crossed.
There you go. Speaking of feuds coming to an end, I'm not saying it's over, but I'm just I'm hoping that it comes to an end. Listen to this. The Terminators score a win over the Dirty White Boys in the bag of flour on a pole match. Now, I don't know what happens with the flour here, but with no Jimmy Hart ringside, I got to wonder, how the hell did the Terminators defeat the White Boys?
What the actual hell? The Terminator. Okay. I don't even know what to say to that. Damn it.
Egads, who booked this shit, pal?
Exactly. I mean, you would have had the perfect excuse. Jimmy Hart, their manager, wasn't in their corner. It threw them off. They lost, but no, they still pull it out because they're great wrestlers.
We make a lot of jokes here on this show. We have a lot of fun here on this show, but I'm going to be serious just for a moment. And I don't understand how these guys still have a job in this company after watching them on TV. And clearly they're not ready for prime time, if you will, whatever you want to call it. And these guys are still here in the territory, still making the rounds. Is it really that dried up? Is the talent really that dried up? Yeah, they're winning.
Winning. I mean, okay, let's take a look at something here. Vince McMahon, he didn't bat 1,000, but he would bring guys in like, say, an Outback Jack. And once he realizes, like, oh, this guy's the shits, within a little bit of time, Outback Jack is relegated to being a jobber and it eventually goes away. Mm-hmm. So I understand if they brought the Terminators in under the pretense from someone who misled them that they were a good team. But at this point, we should realize what we've got on our hands. And they need to just get beat around the horn and then out of here. Why the hell are they beating the Dirty White Boys? Other than the fact that perhaps the Dirty White Boys aren't long for this world either, but still.
Yeah, it's very interesting to see these guys get any type of a real push just based on their quote unquote abilities. But I don't know. We're going to see how long this Terminators stick around, but you might be onto something here with the Dirty White Boys as well. As we go on, we were promised the Fabulous Ones coming back for revenge against the Interns, but the match has changed to Steve Kern versus Intern number 1. So you talked about Stan Lane cutting promos by himself. Well, now Steve Kern having to wrestle by himself.
That's because Stan Lane is still standing cutting those same promos in an undisclosed location, and he wasn't finished.
In those sunglasses and that hat. I don't understand what happened here, but Stan Lane couldn't even bother to make the show. Luckily, it worked out. I mean, it was Steve Kern, and he's the one that has the real beef to pick with the Interns anyway. So at least, they had that much going for him. Steve Kern coming for a little revenge for his shell-shocked daddy.
But it's funny because it's like, usually in these types of results, you wouldn't see it switch to a single. It would have been like Steve Kern and Lanny Poffo defeated the Interns, or, Steve Kern and Tojo Yamamoto. But so it makes you wonder, well, was one of the Interns not there too? Or
most peculiar indeed.
It is.
But that feud's going to continue though. So we'll see what they bring back next week here in the Memphis territory as we head off to the big one, the main event. Jerry the King Lawler challenging the new Southern champion, Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert. And remember the stipulations, as if anybody could forget. If Jerry Lawler loses, he must leave the Memphis territory for a year. But if Eddie Gilbert loses, Jimmy Hart must leave the Memphis territory for a year, even though he's already gone for at least 30 days. And we're actually going to see bits and pieces of this match air on the Jerry Lawler show, on the Jackson show, the arena show, I should say. So we're actually going to see about at least 6.5 minutes of this match on television. The final 6.5 minutes, I should say, which actually goes about 28.5 minutes. So there's a lot to unfold that we didn't get to see. We don't know how the match played out up until then, but it's very interesting because there's a peculiar character lurking around ringside.
And this match also appeared on one of those Jerry Lawler VHS compilations they put out in the 80s. So it does live on YouTube on Jerry Lawler Volume 2, I believe it's called. I may try to find the link and send it to you. But, yeah, it's an interesting match. And after Jimmy Hart promised that we weren't going to see anybody in a hood or
no lookalikes,
change their names or any lookalikes after the match. Well, we didn't see one after the match. We saw one at the match. Huh.
Yeah, a Jimmy Hart clone. I can't remember what his name is.
J.R. Hart's what they ended up calling him. And it's crazy because at a glance, with the sunglasses on and everything, he looks a lot like Jimmy Hart.
Oh, no doubt. The beard and everything. Yeah, absolutely.
But not to spoil things. I mean, look, I don't claim to be a great impersonator or mimic. Now, Ray does a tremendous Randy Savage. He does a lot of great voices on all the different great podcasts on WrestleCopia. But even my poorly executed Jimmy Hart impression sounds closer to Jimmy Hart than this guy when he makes it to TV. He doesn't sound anything like Jimmy Hart. They never should have let this guy open his mouth. Just let him be seen. Because if he never spoke, you could have sent him to some of the local towns.
Yeah.
I don't think some folks would have known the difference.
No, if Jimmy Hart had stuck around, they could have sent this guy to the B towns.
Absolutely. You could have had Jimmy Hart on all the cards and nobody would have been none the wiser.
Right. Well, here it is, the big payoff. And it is Jerry Lawler defeating Eddie Gilbert to recapture for the 412th time the Southern Heavyweight Championship. So Lawler actually going to pin Eddie who falls on top of the King. King going to rock back into a crucifix-type pinfall, pinning Eddie Gilbert, defeating him, winning the championship, and thus Jimmy Hart must leave the Memphis territory for a full year. So Jimmy Hart gone to New York, and we know he won't be back. He's heading up to manage for Vince McMahon and the World Wrestling Federation for some time to come, and I've said it before, but just think about it. In 6 weeks' time, now Jimmy's at his very first TV taping the following day, Tuesday the 12th, I do believe. And he's going to start making the air late in the end of February, beginning of March. And then by the end of March, he's on WrestleMania, the very first WrestleMania, managing the likes of King Kong Bundy and, of course, the Intercontinental Champion, Greg the Hammer Valentine. So Jimmy Hart goes from the Terminators to IC title match in the WWF.
That is absolutely wild. And pretty fun that the match to decide his fate in Memphis happened the day before he shows up at a TV taping for the WWF.
Yeah, it would have been even more fun if he'd already done the TV taping, honestly. But yeah, Jimmy Hart gone from the company. It's official at this point. Jerry Lawler pinning Eddie Gilbert, regaining his Southern title, which I thought he never really lost, but we changed the story somewhere along the way. It just got confusing during that blizzard. But yeah, that's the Mid-South Coliseum, Gene, as we roll on. One more piece of business here this week. Louisville Gardens, Louisville, Kentucky, Tuesday, February 12th. But before we get going there, we've got a quick commercial for everyone.
It's Carl Casper's world's largest custom auto show, featuring the world premiere of the sensational Street Hawk stunt cycle. See Bigfoot at Hollywood's greatest stunt car, the A-Team Band, the Fall Guy pickup, and Knight Rider's all-new kit, plus the Jumpin' General Lee. Meet General Hospital's Jimmy Lee Holt, Playboy's Playmate of the Year Barbara Edwards, the Solid Gold Dancers, a Super Jam Band Battle, Mr. T Lookalike, Break Dancers, Superstar Wrestler, hilarious cartoon characters, and the greatest show of all time, next weekend at the Fairgrounds.
I love that was a thing that you advertised. Mr. T Lookalike. Guy doesn't even have a name. He's just Mr. T Lookalike. But I noted here, same lineup on this car show in Louisville as they had in Memphis. The same cars, the Mr. T Lookalike, obviously the Memphis wrestlers. Remember the Lawler show? Lawler had the quote-unquote Memphis event coordinator on there, and he was promoting all this great stuff that he was bringing to town, but clearly it was in every town. So I wrote, some event coordinator.
Yeah, really. He just... It's like, yeah, bring it on here. The same stuff you've brought everywhere. But yeah, I mean, that's fun, that people were turning out just to see vehicles from shows. Not necessarily any stars, but you can see the Fall Guy truck. Hey, I'd have been there as a kid. I love the Fall Guy. I'm not gonna lie. I'd have been there to see the Dukes of Hazzard car, the Fall Guy truck. I'm in for all of it. Much more than I would have cared about anybody from General Hospital, or even at that point, '85, probably even more so than the Playmate of the Year. So.
Yeah, well, I was
like
Dukes of Hazzard may have been my favorite non-cartoon television program when it was still on the air. And as far as the Fall Guy goes, I don't know that I ever watched that when it was airing in the early 80s, but when it was in syndication later, it would air 2 hours of Fall Guy every week after Superstars, and then 1 hour of the Fall Guy every week after Wrestling Challenge. So I saw me tons of Fall Guy, in the later years.
Nice.
Syndication in the late 80s. So yeah, got me plenty of my Fall Guy fix. As we roll off now, guys, some localized promos upcoming, heading for this card in Louisville.
Okay, back to Channel 3's Championship Wrestling right here. We'll be in the ring in a moment. Boy, talking about being in the ring. Tuesday night, Louisville Gardens, I got to tell you, 4 main events and some opening matches. Friend, it is going to be a whale of a night, including the fabulous one, Stan and Steve, who would like very much to get a hold of not only the interns, but Troy Graham.
Do you think he's mad? Do you think he's mad? I hope you are mad, boy. I've been mad for 9 months. I've been in this wheelchair. I've been mad. We got even with you, Steve Kern, Stan Lane. Your old fat daddy is laying in a hospital now just like I did for 9 months. Louisville, KY, Wave Country. We'll wave it goodbye, fabulous one.
Yeah, we'll find out Tuesday night when the action takes place, because I'll tell you another bout you're going to see. You're going to see the Dirty White Boys going against the Terminators with Jimmy Hart. Pole match, 5-pound bag of flour right up on top.
You know, this is the most stupidest match I've ever been in my life. Let me tell you something. 45 feet up in there, 5 pounds on top. Let me tell you what, we're not going to be humiliated, right, Frazier?
Right.
Okay, well, we'll find that out, too. I can tell you one thing else about being humiliated. It may or it may not happen, but Jerry the King Lawler is going to be mad. He wants that belt back, Eddie Gilbert.
That's just great, Lance, because you doubted me. All the people out there doubted me, but I walked off with the Southern Heavyweight title. Now, a little message to you, King Lawler. If you're the man that you say you are, if you're the king that you say you are, you come in the ring and you get in the ring with Eddie Hot Stuff Gilbert, and you try your best to take this Southern title, but I don't think you can.
Well, brother, that's what it's going to be all about. Tuesday night, all of those matches and more. Okay, we're going to be back into the action here on Channel 3's Championship Wrestling. Boy, I'll tell you what, I love Tuesday night in there. We have got 4 main events. I tell you, some of the other matches could be called main events, too, and they are something else. You got a handicap match with Playboy Frazier putting up 500, and he can pin both of the Battens in 10 minutes. You got a Mid-America title match with Iron Mike Sharp against Handsome Jimmy Valiant. You got a return of Adrian Street going against Randy Macho Man Savage. Boy, one that's going to be something else is going to be the Southern Heavyweight title when Jerry Lawler comes after Eddie Gilbert, and I mean mad to get that title back. A pole match with the Dirty White Boys and the Terminators with Hart, 5-pound bag of flour, and it'll be the Fabs and the Interns. The fabulous ones had something to say about that.
We don't need a lot of time to come out here and do a lot of talking, because talk's cheap, if you noticed, by Troy Graham. I'll tell you one thing. We came back originally to wrestle for the titles. But that's all out of the picture now, because our dads got jumped. That's something that's never happened to Stan and I. We've never faced that personal issue like that. And I'll tell you something. You saw just a little taste of what happened the first time we met the Interns. And we've asked Eddie Marlin and the promotion to put us in the ring anytime, any place with them, because we've got a score to settle now. Those titles are far out of the picture so far as the fabulous ones are concerned. You know, when we saw what happened to our dads, that touched real close to the heart. That came closer to the heart than anything has ever had. And I'll tell you something, Troy Graham, you're going to be in that wheelchair for a long time when we get done around here.
So Troy Graham doing it once again, talking about your old fat daddy, Steve Kern. He's laying up in a hospital bed somewhere. And Jimmy Hart talking about that bag of flour. Of course, Jimmy's suspended. He's gone now, so that's null and void, the promo there. Eddie Gilbert says everybody doubted him as the Southern champion, but he's still the Southern champion here, at least in Louisville. As Jerry Lawler, he says, he's going to take the title back, and Eddie Gilbert says, hey, come and try me. Also hearing from the fabulous ones there looking for revenge on Troy Graham and the Interns. So we're going to look at the card right now, Gene.
Let's hear it.
Well, first of all, they promoted a match that doesn't take place, and that really upset me. It was supposed to be, we're going to go back a couple weeks in the storylines, it was supposed to be Playboy Frazier taking on the Battens, $500 if the Battens can beat Playboy, or was it Playboy can beat the Battens in 10 minutes? I get confused. There's so much going on in different weeks here with this story between these three guys. I'm wondering, when are they going to cut his hair on Memphis TV? Because if he shows up in these other towns too early with a shaved head, they're already going to know the outcome.
Exactly. Yeah, those head shaving stipulations were probably really tricky to pull off on the bicycle towns. I mean, that's
the only way that's going to work is if you wait a couple weeks to put him back on TV. All right, we got him back in the studio. Now he's going to have to honor his commitments and cut his hair. That's the only way I could think you can get away with it, really, for it to make sense. Throughout the bicycle, the 2-3 weeks time difference. But that match was announced for the card, but it does not take place. In its place, we get tag team action. No, I'm sorry. We get singles action here. Look at this. Leaping Lanny Poffo over Harley Hogg, a.k.a. Lanny Keene, Cousin Jr., the future Moondog Cujo.
Wow. Lanny Keene, Cousin Jr. I did not put together years later at first when Moondog Cujo arrived that's who that was at first. And then once I figured it out, I was like, holy, that's Cousin Jr.? Wow.
Yeah, Cousin Jr., if you believe George Steele's story, he got so big-headed, in the Hillbillies, the gimmick that they were pushing there, that he just came in one day in a limousine, just pulled up in a limousine with a Cuban cigar and announced that he was quitting the WWF. I don't know where he thought he was going, but that's supposedly how he left the company. And then he was replaced by Cousin Luke for a brief period there, Gene Pettit.
Bill Watts would have fired him just for being a hillbilly showing up in a limousine, killing his gimmick.
There you go. Yeah, he would have. Although, now think about this. I would have changed Uncle Elmer's gimmick had I seen him pull up in a limo. Oh, this is your new deal, pal. You are indeed the Playboy. I love it. Yeah. But anyways, here in Louisville, though, we get no Playboy. Instead, it's Lanny Poffo over the future Cousin Jr. So it all ties in together. No Uncle Elmer, but we do get a Cousin Jr. Also on the card, Mr. Wrestling. Once again, Tommy Gilbert under that mask. Over Tojo Yamamoto, it's Adrian Street defeating the Macho Man Randy Savage. Jimmy Valiant over Iron Mike Sharp. So Sharp's starting to do some jobs here. Turnaround fair play. It looks like the Dirty White Boys going to pick up a win over the Terminators. Now, it was supposed to be another flower on the pole match, but this one was announced as a handicap match. It was supposed to be the White Boys versus the Terminators and Jimmy Hart, but we know no Jimmy Hart here, so instead, White Boys scoring the win. So, again, curious to see how the flower played out in that one. Also on the card, Eddie Gilbert, the Southern champion, I suppose. Are we not acknowledging it in Louisville? I really don't know. Eddie Gilbert over Jerry Lawler on a DQ. And in the main event, Stan Lane does bother to show up here. It's the Fabulous Ones defeating the Southern Tag Team Champion Interns in a non-title match. It was all about family and revenge.
Always. Yeah, man, Lane makes it to Louisville, but didn't make it to Memphis. That feels backwards, but
yeah, kind of weird. Well, I guess in that promo, Gilbert acknowledged himself as the Southern champion, so he defeats Lawler here on a DQ, again, the bicycle, so Lawler gonna, I guess, have to continue to fight for the title in Louisville.
And because I guess he's going to win the title back, because I guess Jimmy Hart will lose a loser leave town in Louisville, I assume, so...
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to play out. I guess whenever the tape airs there, they're going to have to roll with it. That awesome Lawler promo going to air in every town sooner or later. As we close out the week, I know there's action in Fulton, Mississippi, and Itawamba Junior College on Thursday.
I lived in Fulton, Mississippi for about a year and a half, and I had a lot of friends that went to school at Itawamba Junior College. So
was there a Memphis city that you did not live in or not know family members that lived? This is amazing.
I have ties to a lot of them. I'll tell you that much.
In other territories, the big names wouldn't bother to go to the smaller towns or the high schools, but Memphis is different. Lawler went to the towns that were closest. So if it was a high school, he might appear there. If it was a bigger city, but it was further away, maybe not so much. So it was always fun to see where Jerry Lawler was going to pop up. But anyway, February 14th, that was a Thursday, Fulton, Mississippi. And then the following day, Friday, February 15th, in Somerville, Tennessee, at the Fayette County Action Center. They promised action there, I suppose. I don't have any results for those shows, but some new cities popping up here, so I wanted to mention them.
So you can imagine that somebody in Fulton, Mississippi was like trying to convince their girlfriend it was great for Valentine's Day to go see the Memphis Wrestling.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. College. Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm sure.
Lucky gal.
Wait a minute. Do you think anybody watching wrestling in Fulton, Mississippi had a girlfriend that knew what Valentine's Day was?
You may have made a good point there. That's true.
Whew. Well, gee, that wraps it up here this week. Some interesting TV, kind of. I mean, big storyline. Whether Lawler sold it hardcore or not is another question. But Yeah, Jimmy Hart is 100% definitely gone off to the World Wrestling Federation. He is no more. Going to be interesting to see how they follow it up here with mouthpieces for TV. And as you mentioned, Jimmy Hart promised there would be no lookalikes replacing him. Maybe that was Lawler's, revenge. Oh, is that what he said in that promo? Okay.
We'll make a liar out of him because that'll show everybody.
Hey.
Yeah, I mean, Jimmy Hart, top heel manager, top heel, basically. You can just cut it off there. Top heel in Memphis for quite some time now, so it's going to be interesting to see who they try to get to fill those shoes.
Man, I can't wait to see what happens next week here on TV. I want to see how some things play out and see if some of these guys are not going to be around much longer. Obviously, it was weird that the White Boys lost to the Terminators in Memphis. Also weird that, well, not weird, but Mike Sharp now losing the Mid-American title after a couple months of holding it. I guess it was due time in the Memphis territory. And I'm still waiting for Randy Savage to appear on studio television here in 1985.
Yeah, that's a shame because at least with some of this, I mean, right now, especially these past few weeks, we needed some Randy Savage to spice up this TV, whether it be in the ring or just his promos. So let's hope he finds his way to TV5 soon because we need it.
And Randy feels like one of those guys that would be there because he loved promoting himself. He loved promoting, what he was going to be able to do and go make some money with it. Randy wasn't a guy that sat at home ever. So it really doesn't feel like, well, like you said, they're not getting paid, so he didn't feel like making the drive. Obviously Lanny's not here either. So I feel like to a degree, maybe Randy's making this decision, making this call, but it seems a little odd that he wouldn't show up at all in any week. He hasn't been here the entire year so far.
No, not once. And, you see him on the towns, and like you said in the past, it seemed his main role was to appear when Lawler couldn't or wouldn't be there.
Right. So he's either working Adrian Street somewhere in the upper mid-card or in the other towns when Lawler's not there. It is. And they're pretty big towns too, Jackson and things like that. When Lawler's not going to show up, Randy Savage, he was plugged into the Coliseum last week. Had it actually taken place, it was supposed to be Savage versus Eddie Gilbert. So, I mean, obviously we didn't get that, and Lawler's back now, and it is what it is. But we'll see what happens with the Macho Man over the next few months, though. As we're going to close up here this week, Gene, appreciate you again stopping by and putting out another one here. More Memphis right around the corner, though. We just keep trucking.
It was fun as always, man, and it's going to be fun to see how a Jimmy Hartless Memphis plays out. And like you said, we know there's some people going away, so it's going to be interesting to see who comes in and how this all unfolds. But it's, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it's got to get better, right?
Yeah. You got to figure the Terminators are the bottom of the barrel. It can't get any worse than that. So it can only go up from here. And I'm looking forward to that, Gene. As we wrap up here, if you want to plug any of your upcoming stuff, please do so, sir.
Well, if you're into current wrestling, every Sunday night, we do a podcast. Me and some of my buddies from Main Event Comedy do the Main Event Comedy podcast. Although we don't talk a lot of comedy on there, we talk some, but mostly modern wrestling. You can find that over on my Facebook page, facebook.com/GeneJackson95 or facebook.com/Main Event Comedy. And also you can check out my YouTube channel over at youtube.com/Retro Wrestling Network. A lot of old school wrestling podcasts. And of course, our silly OWF comedy parody wrestling. I'm not going to try to explain it. If you like wrestling silliness that's on par with some of the stuff we've heard about and seen in 85 Memphis, go check it out.
Sounds good, man. Appreciate you as always being here, Gene. Looking forward to more of this and upcoming very soon, the WrestleMania 4 videocast coming to Patreon as well.
Hey, man, I'm excited about that. I had a lot of fun getting to be a part of the WrestleMania 4 review shows, parts 1 and 2, which now you can find as the complete 7.5-hour marathon. Not to steal your spot there, but the definitive WrestleMania 4 podcast. And man, I got to cover the Battle Royal. I got to cover Honky Tonk Man versus Brutus Beefcake for the Intercontinental title. And we got to cover the miraculous, stupendous return of Matilda the Wonder Dog right there at, we call it Trump Plaza. It's not really, but I got to play along with their gag. And the head scratching, we talk about some of the booking here in Memphis, and check out that review as me and Ray both agreed that the result of that 6-man tag was a bit of a head scratcher as well. So check it out and see if you agree.
Yeah, and a lot of Bob Uecker sound bites in between. We have a lot of fun. So go check that out. Yeah, over a 7+ hour bonus edition of The Grenade right now on Patreon and soon everywhere your podcast streaming needs are met. Yeah, 7 hours, the entire, it sounds like the NFL Sunday Ticket, 7 hours. But yeah, it's quite a while. You can sit around and listen to it. Or
you can pop them earbuds in and pretty much cover your whole shift, depending on what kind of job you have and how long you're there. So
pick it up and put it down at your leisure, guys. Honestly, I don't expect you to listen to it straight through, but it's there if you want to. And obviously, the parts are also split up out there right now and available. I got a lot of great feedback. I'm going to be covering that next week when The Grenade returns with episode 124. We're going to be reading some of the feedback left on Facebook, Twitter, and beyond. Lots of great positivity coming from all of the great special guests that I had for the show and everything you guys added to the program. I want to share my appreciation for that again, Gene, there and as well here on the Regional Wrestling program. And we'll be back soon, guys. Going to get as many in as we can. The Glory Days GrappleCon upcoming very soon, and I likely won't be putting out many podcasts that week or maybe the week after. Somewhere around that time, we're going to take a little bit of a hiatus, maybe a hiatus. Not really sure yet, but yeah, Gene, just appreciate you, brother, and I'm looking forward to doing this again very soon.
Hey, I appreciate you having me. It's always fun, and big thanks to everybody out there that listens, and I know there's a lot of you, so much appreciated, folks.
All right, guys, that'll do it here this week, but we shall return for more Georgia 81, Memphis 85, and UWF 86 very soon. I'm your host, Ray Russell. You can follow me on X at Rasslin Grenade. That's at RASSLIN Grenade. Also, follow and like me, Facebook.com/Rasslin Grenade. And don't forget that $5 all access tier over at Patreon.com/WrestleCopia. And until next time, we'll be back soon with more regional wrestling, where we talk the territories.